Your stomach bloats after every single meal. Doesn't matter what you eat. Salad, rice, even plain toast. By 2 p.m., you look 6 months pregnant, and by night, you're lying in bed wondering if something inside you is seriously broken. It's not broken, but what's causing it is something no one has thought to tell you. I remember the exact morning everything shifted for me, not as a patient, as a professional. I'd been working in clinical nutrition and metabolic health for over a decade at that point, and I genuinely thought, I understood digestive dysfunction. I'd read the studies, I'd attended the conferences, I'd helped hundreds of patients navigate bloating, sluggish metabolism, stubborn fat around the midsection that refused to budge no matter how disciplined they were. But that morning, sitting in a small research library in Osaka, I came across a paper that made me put my coffee down and just stare. It wasn't new research. That was the part that rattled me. The study had been published years earlier, buried under layers of more glamorous findings about probiotics and trendy superfoods. And what it described was so elegant, so devastatingly simple, that I actually felt a wave of frustration. Because if I had known this sooner, truly understood it, I could have helped so many people avoid years of unnecessary suffering. What was the study about? A single ingredient, 1 spoonful, taken in the morning on an empty stomach. And what it did to both visceral fat and the lining of the digestive tract was unlike anything the flashier supplements could touch. Let me walk you back to the beginning, because this story doesn't start where you think it does. When most people hear belly fat, they picture a cosmetic problem, something that makes jeans tight and mirrors unpleasant. But visceral fat, the deep fat wrapped around your liver, your intestines, your stomach, that's a completely different animal. It doesn't just sit there. It secretes. It communicates. It sends inflammatory signals throughout your entire body, like a low-grade alarm that never stops ringing. And here's the part that almost no one connects. That same inflammation, it's destroying your digestion from the inside. Think about it. You eat well, you exercise, maybe you've even cut sugar, but the bloating persists, the heaviness after meals, the gas that appears out of nowhere, the constipation that alternates with urgency, the feeling that food just sits inside you for hours, fermenting, expanding, refusing to move. You've probably been told it's stress, or age, or just your body. No, what's actually happening is a feedback loop, and it's one of the most underdiagnosed patterns I've encountered in clinical practice. Visceral fat produces cytokines, inflammatory molecules, that damage the mucosal barrier of your gut. That barrier is only 1 cell thick. 1. When it gets compromised, partially digested food particles and bacterial toxins slip through into your bloodstream. Your immune system panics. More inflammation, more fat storage, worse digestion, more bloating. Round and round it goes. And nothing, no probiotic, no detox tea, no elimination diet will fully resolve it until you address the root. Which brings me back to that study in Osaka. The ingredient was apple cider vinegar. Raw, unfiltered, with the mother culture intact. And before you roll your eyes and think, oh, I've heard this before, stay with me. Because what the research uncovered was not the generic "it helps with digestion" claim you'll find on wellness blogs. It was far more specific, far more powerful, and far more misunderstood. Here's what actually happens at the molecular level when you take 1 tablespoon of raw apple cider vinegar diluted in warm water first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. The acetic acid, which makes up about 5 to 6% of the vinegar, does 3 things simultaneously. First, it stimulates the production of hydrochloric acid in your stomach. This is critical. Most people over 40 are not producing enough stomach acid. Not too much, not enough. And without adequate stomach acid, your food doesn't get properly broken down. Proteins putrefy. Carbohydrates ferment. Fats go rancid. That's the bloating. That's the gas. That's the heaviness that sits like a stone after meals. Second, and this is the part that stopped me cold when I read it, acetic acid directly influences the expression of genes involved in fat oxidation. Specifically, it activates an enzyme called AMPK, adenosine monophosphate activated protein kinase, which is essentially your body's master metabolic switch. When AMPK is activated, your cells shift from fat storage mode to fat burning mode. Not in some abstract, marginal way, in a measurable, documented, clinically significant way. A study published in Bioscience, Biotechnology, and Biochemistry followed participants who consumed just 1 to 2 tablespoons of vinegar daily. Over 12 weeks, no other dietary changes, they showed reductions in belly fat, waist circumference, body weight, and triglyceride levels. 12 weeks, one ingredient. But wait, the third mechanism is arguably the most important one. Acetic acid feeds a very specific population of bacteria in your lower intestine. Bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids, particularly butyrate. Butyrate is the primary fuel source for the cells that line your colon. Without it, those cells weaken. The tight junctions between them loosen. And that's exactly how you end up with increased intestinal permeability, what some researchers call leaky gut. So when you take that 1 spoonful every morning, you're not just helping digestion in some vague, hand-wavy sense. You're rebuilding the structural integrity of your gut wall. You're reactivating your body's own acid production. You're flipping the metabolic switch from storage to burn. And you're feeding the exact bacteria that keep the whole system sealed and functioning. 1 ingredient, 3 mechanisms, working simultaneously. Now, I need to pause here because I see a pattern in my practice that breaks my heart every time. People come in after years, sometimes a decade, of bouncing between gastroenterologists, dietitians, wellness coaches. They've spent hundreds, sometimes thousands, on tests, supplements, programs. They've been told they have IBS. They've been told it's anxiety. They've been told to eat more fiber, which, by the way, in many cases makes the problem dramatically worse because you're adding bulk to a system that can't even process what's already there. And then they hear about something this simple, this affordable, this accessible. And their first reaction is almost always the same: disbelief. That can't be it. It's too easy. But that's exactly the point. The most profound interventions in health are rarely the expensive ones. They're the ones that work with your body's own chemistry instead of trying to override it. They're the boring ones, the unsexy ones, the ones that don't make good marketing because there's nothing to patent. I had a patient, Colleen, 53, ran a small bakery in Portland. Ironic, right? Surrounded by bread all day, couldn't digest a single meal without feeling like her abdomen was going to rupture. She'd stopped eating lunch entirely because the afternoon bloating was so severe it affected her ability to stand at the counter and work. Her doctor had prescribed a proton pump inhibitor, which, I should mention, actually reduces stomach acid even further. The exact opposite of what she needed. When I suggested apple cider vinegar, 1 tablespoon in a glass of warm water, 20 minutes before breakfast, she laughed. Literally laughed. She said, "I've spent $4,000 on specialists, and you're telling me the answer is in my pantry?" 3 weeks later, she sent me a message I still have saved. "I ate a full lunch today. No bloating. I cried in the kitchen." That's not an anomaly. That's a pattern I've observed consistently. And I'll tell you something else about Colleen that stuck with me. When her bloating resolved, she expected to feel relief. And she did. But what she didn't expect was the grief. Real grief. She sat across from me one afternoon and said, "I'm angry. I lost years. I stopped going to dinner with friends. I stopped wearing anything fitted. I convinced myself this was just who I was now, a person who couldn't eat without suffering. And the thing is, she's not wrong to be angry, because the answer was there the whole time, sitting on a shelf, costing less than $4. That's the cruelty of it. Not that solutions don't exist, but that they get buried under noise, marketing, and the quiet arrogance of a system that equates complexity with credibility. But, and this is important, there are details that matter. Details that most articles and videos leave out, which is why many people try vinegar once, feel it burn their throat, and abandon it. First, it must be diluted. Always. 1 tablespoon in at least 8 ounces of warm water. Never straight. The undiluted acid can damage tooth enamel and irritate the esophagus. Warm water is ideal because it gently wakes up the digestive tract and enhances the absorption of acetic acid. Second, timing matters. An empty stomach is essential. If you take it with food or after eating, you lose most of the hydrochloric acid stimulation effect. The vinegar needs to hit the stomach lining when there's nothing else competing for attention. Third, consistency beats quantity. 1 tablespoon daily is more effective than 3 tablespoons sporadically. Your microbiome responds to regularity. Your stomach acid production adapts over time. This is not a one-time fix. It's a daily recalibration. Fourth, and almost nobody mentions this, look at the bottle. If the vinegar is clear and perfectly transparent, it's been pasteurized. The mother culture, that cloudy, strand-like sediment at the bottom, is where the beneficial enzymes, bacteria, and proteins live. Without it, you're drinking flavored acid, which will still have some effect, but you lose the gut-healing dimension entirely. And I want you to understand something about the belly fat piece specifically. Visceral fat is hormonal. It's inflammatory. It's metabolically active. And it responds to hormonal and inflammatory signals more than it responds to calorie restriction. That's why you can diet aggressively and still see that stubborn ring around your midsection. You're fighting the wrong battle. You're cutting fuel when the real problem is the engine. AMPK activation through acetic acid addresses this at the level of cellular signaling. It tells your fat cells to release their stored energy. It improves insulin sensitivity, which means your body handles sugar better, stores less fat, and produces fewer of those inflammatory cytokines that damage your gut lining. Do you see the loop now? Better digestion reduces inflammation. Less inflammation allows belly fat to release. Less belly fat reduces the inflammatory load on your gut. Your gut heals. Your digestion improves further. And the cycle reverses, from a vicious one to a virtuous one. 1 spoonful started it. And you know what's funny? Not funny in a humorous way, but in a quietly devastating one. This information has been available for years, decades even. Fermented vinegar has been used medicinally in Japanese, Chinese, and Greek traditions for centuries. Hippocrates prescribed it. Traditional Japanese medicine calls it a digestive harmonizer. There's nothing revolutionary about it. What's revolutionary is how systematically it's been ignored by modern medicine in favor of prescription drugs that manage symptoms while the root cause festers untouched. I want you to pause for a second and ask yourself something. And I genuinely mean this. If you're watching right now, I want to know. Where are you watching from? What city? What country? And more importantly, have you experienced this? The bloating that nobody takes seriously? The belly fat that won't respond to anything you try? Because I know you're out there. I've seen thousands of faces just like yours in my practice, and the one thing that always surprises me is how alone each person thinks they are. You're not alone. Drop a comment. Tell me what you've been dealing with. Tell me where you're watching from. Because this community, the people watching this right now, they understand exactly what you're going through. And sometimes, just knowing that makes more difference than any supplement ever could. If this is hitting home for you, subscribe, because what I'm sharing in the next few videos goes even deeper. Now, let me tell you about the hormonal layer, because this is where most explanations stop short. Cortisol, the stress hormone. When you're chronically stressed, and let's be honest, who isn't, cortisol levels remain elevated. Elevated cortisol does two things relevant to our conversation. It increases visceral fat deposition, and it slows gastric motility, meaning food moves through your system more slowly, meaning more fermentation, more gas, more bloating. Apple cider vinegar won't magically lower your cortisol. Let me be honest about that. But here's what it does do. By improving digestion and reducing the inflammatory cascade, it removes one of the major physiological stressors on your body. Your nervous system calms. Your vagus nerve, which connects your gut to your brain, starts sending safe signals instead of danger signals. Your body moves from sympathetic dominance, fight or flight, toward parasympathetic recovery, rest and digest. The name says it all, doesn't it? Rest and digest. You can't do one without the other. There's also the blood sugar dimension, which ties everything together in a way that's almost poetic. When you consume acetic acid before your first meal, it slows the rate at which glucose enters your bloodstream after eating. This has been demonstrated in multiple controlled studies. One from Arizona State University showed a significant reduction in post-meal glucose levels in participants who consumed vinegar beforehand compared to those who didn't. The result? Lower insulin spikes. And when insulin stays lower, your body receives the biochemical permission to burn stored fat instead of packing on more. Think about what that means practically. Every morning, before you eat a single bite, you can set the metabolic tone for your entire day. Not with a $90 supplement, not with a complicated protocol, with a tablespoon of fermented apple juice. For anyone dealing with that mid-afternoon energy crash, the one where you could fall asleep at your desk at 2:30 p.m., where your eyelids weigh 10 pounds and your brain feels like it's wading through mud, this is often the missing piece. It's not that you need more coffee. It's that your blood sugar spiked after lunch, then crashed hard. The vinegar buffer prevents that spike in the first place. Simple, elegant, overlooked. And I want to share something else with you before we reach the end. Something I don't talk about often. There's a quiet epidemic happening. Not one that makes headlines, not one that anyone marches for. It's the epidemic of women, and men too, but disproportionately women, who have been dismissed, told their symptoms are normal, told their belly fat is just genetics, told their bloating is just what happens as you get older. It's not normal, it's not inevitable, and it's certainly not something you just have to accept. Every single day, someone walks into a clinic, describes exactly the pattern I've outlined in this video, and walks out with a prescription that addresses none of it. And that infuriates me. Not at the professionals, because most are doing their best within a system that doesn't give them time, but at the paradigm itself. The paradigm that says simple is insufficient, that natural is naive, that if it doesn't come with a patent number and a clinical trial funded by a pharmaceutical company, it doesn't count. It counts. This counts. 1 tablespoon, warm water, empty stomach, every morning. Give it 3 weeks. Not 3 days, 3 weeks. Your gut lining needs time to repair. Your stomach acid needs time to recalibrate. Your microbiome needs time to rebalance. Your fat cells need time to get the message. And when it starts working, and if you're consistent, it will, you'll feel it before you see it. The bloating fades first. Then the energy shifts. Then the belly starts to soften. Then someone you haven't seen in a month says, "You look different. What changed?" And you'll smile, because the answer is almost absurdly simple. If what I've shared today made you feel something, relief, recognition, even anger at how long you've gone without hearing this, do me one favor. Share this video with one person who needs it. One friend, one sister, one coworker who's been fighting this same invisible battle. Because the truth is, information like this doesn't spread through algorithms. It spreads through people who care enough to say, "Watch this. This might change everything." And I'll leave you with a question that I want you to sit with. Not answer right away, but truly sit with. If one hidden ingredient could begin to reverse this cycle, what else has been hiding in plain sight, waiting for you to notice it? Because in the next video, I'm going to show you something even more unexpected, something your body has been begging for, and you've probably been actively avoiding it. Stay close.